Good morning, and thank you for joining us at Trialogue for our monthly webinars. My name's Sheldon Morias, and welcome to our September webinar. We host these online forums monthly on the last Thursday of the month, so mark it in your calendars. Where's the year gone already? We're in September. We've got one more lined up for October, which you'll get more information about. But for today, in Heritage Month and also Literacy Month, International Literacy Day was marked earlier this month, and it is Literacy Month, a key focus for South Africa and those who work in the sector. From all the way from government to corporates and NPOs who do really important work. And today we'll be exploring how companies can build and support literacy programs, the current programs that government has, really good programs that run across the country, NPOs like Nali Bali, who are joining us today, and looking at how companies can support them both directly through their CSI in terms of literacy as part of their education spend, but also very innovative approaches coming up, which we'll hear more about around how you can plug books into other types of development sector projects that that may be running. So thank you very much for joining us today. It's really going to be an interesting topic that we unpack. Thank you for all the registrations. We've got a really strong audience today, and we're going to jump straight into the topic to allow you to ask as many questions as possible, for our speakers to have a really engaging conversation as well. So thank you very much for taking the time, for joining us, for signing up today. I want to say thank you to our panelists for joining us and agreeing to share their insights and taking the time out to be with us this morning. And thank you to you, our audience, as I've mentioned, for joining us today. Our webinars are 90 minutes. You may think that sounds like a long time, but I can tell you it's going to fly by quickly for us to get into that conversation. It does give us more time to delve into the really important topics we deal with each month, to deal with your questions. It really is about having an engaging conversation on that point. So a couple of technical points. Our platform, which you're joining us on today, allows you to follow the discussion, connect with your fellow delegates, pose questions, vote in our polls, and rate the session as well. I do encourage you to use the chat box to connect with fellow delegates and share your thoughts. Also, let us know where you're from as well. It gives us a good indication of who is in the room. As well, you can ask a question also by using the chat function, but just click on the green Ask a Question bar before typing your question. I will then draw questions from the Q&A box for our panelists to respond to in the discussion section of the webinar. So please do keep your questions and your thoughts coming as well. And then if possible, keep your questions direct and then to indicate if you are directing it at a specific panelist as well. So there'll be a short survey as well, which will pop up at the end of the session. I will share that link. Please do share your thoughts here so that we can improve these sessions and focus on topics that are of particular interest to you. And in fact, going from 60 minutes to 90 minutes was as a result of people asking for more time to be able to engage in the webinars and the discussions that we have. And then just finally, this session is being recorded and an article and the full recording will be made available to everyone who registered next week and will also be posted on our Knowledge Hub, which I will take you through in a bit. Just to run you through the agenda for this morning, I'll do a brief introduction, which will soon wrap up. I will then introduce each of our panelists who will give us their opening comment before we move over into the Q&A section of the discussion. And just a reminder, I will draw from that Q&A box, so please do pose your questions as well to make it a really engaging conversation. Each panelist will then give us a short closing comment, snap recommendations, takeaways, some final thoughts as well. We're going to be posting the first poll now, which will appear on your screen. We'd like to know which type of organization you represent. This will help the panelists and myself shape the discussion to make it as effective and tailored for you. So I'll leave that up for a minute. And if anyone has just joined us and may have missed the introduction, today's topic is how companies can support literacy programs through their CSI work and through the work that they do, both within their organizations and externally and their external partners, whether it be government, whether it be NPOs and other civil society organizations as well. So we're really looking forward to that discussion this morning. Thank you for keeping those, for letting us know where you are from. That's great to see. So we've got those comments coming in. Thank you very much. Okay, good to see the representation that we have in the room. I'll leave that up just a bit longer for you to vote. If you've just joined us, thank you for joining us this morning and taking time out of your day to join us. So we really do value that and appreciate you joining us as well. And please do keep your thoughts coming throughout the conversation. It's great to see you all joining in this morning. Okay, that's great to see the discussions. Okay, let's see what the results show. Okay, so great representation from the NPO sector, big business, great to see that, consultants, small business as well, academics and others. So thank you very much for your votes, and thank you to everyone. I see the comments start coming in. So thank you very much, and glad to hear you're excited to join the discussion. Okay, so let's move on. Now, I'm pleased to see some familiar faces on the call, familiar organizations as well. I see there are a few new names, and welcome to our CSI and nonprofit network. A special welcome if you're a first timer. Just want to briefly take you through, what we do at Trialogue, who we are. We're one of only a few consultancies that focus exclusively on responsible business. We do this through our consulting services as well as through our knowledge sharing platforms, such as our webinar here, all of which we aim to make corporate social investment in South Africa more effective. And the two types of consulting that we do are CSI strategy development and monitoring and evaluation. On the thought leadership side, you may know our Trialogue Business and Society Conference and our Trialogue Business and Society Handbook, which we are currently in production with, busy analyzing our primary research and compiling our content for the handbook, which is, in its 28th edition. It really is a rich document and repository of information that is used widely, both in the non-profit sector and in the business sector, to shape and make work more effective. And thank you very much to all of you who may have participated in that research. It really does help us to get an accurate picture of what the development sector in South Africa looks like. If you'd like to advertise in the handbook or share a case study, which will also be published online and shared in our newsletters with our networks on social media, you can get in touch with Lerato Ramoba. I'll pop her email address into the chat box in a bit. And then you may know our, the handbook, our conference well, but I'd also just like to introduce you to the Trialogue Knowledge Hub, which really is a leading platform in terms of capacity building, knowledge sharing, all the way from, responsible business topics such as shared value, collaboration, as well as, development sector research information across all of the various development sectors, education, social development, and the like. And just a reminder, this is where the write-up and the recording of this webinar will be uploaded to the Trialogue Knowledge Hub. I'd like to introduce you to the Trialogue Knowledge Hub, the leading information resource for social investors in Africa. The Knowledge Hub builds on Trialogue's deep knowledge and research-based strategy, which underpins the more established Business and Society Handbook and Conference. It's a unique repository of specialist information available for free to companies, non-profit organizations, governments, and scholars of African corporate social investment and responsible business. Since its launch in 2017, it has grown its coverage on a range of responsible business topics, including collaboration and shared value, showcasing the latest research, case studies, and insights. The Knowledge Hub offers a number of features, including articles, case studies, and expert opinions offering valuable and in-depth information, development sector sections that demonstrate how and why to invest with case studies and examples backed up by research, an industry leaders tab profiling companies and showcasing their CSI and responsible business objectives and initiatives, along with their news, insights, and case studies. A section featuring resources, guidance, and tips specifically for non-profit organizations. An NPO directory which features an accessible and easy-to-use list of South African NPOs. A function to search by development sector or responsible business topic, together with a search tool making it simpler to find what you need. Visit the Knowledge Hub today and become a stronger social impact leader. Now, to get into our topic for today, I'm going to put up the second poll, which will allow us to, as I said, engage and get a sense of what you're thinking on some of the matters we'll be discussing today. So we're going to put that poll up now, which speaks to today's topic. What do you believe is the biggest barrier to improving literacy outcomes in South Africa? I'll leave that up for a while to allow you to vote as we go through, just the context of what we're facing in the literary crisis and the context, on the ground for today's discussion. I'll leave that up for a while. Great to see those votes coming in. Thank you very much. Thank you for all the comments in the chat box. Great to see you all, and from the range of organizations you represent there as well. So thank you for that. Just a reminder, if you did join us late, you can post your comment and chat and engage with your fellow audience members by using the chat box. If you'd like to ask a question, just click on the green tab button, ask a question, type your question in, and then fire it off. And I will be pulling questions from the chat, from the Q&A box to pose for our guests, to our panelists to start engaging with there. So let's see the results of that first poll. Thank you very much. I see the votes still coming in. So 21% of you saying insufficient funding for education and literacy programs. Let's see how we can address that aspect of it today with our discussion. Poor quality of teacher training and instruction, 31% of you coming and listing that as what you think is the biggest barrier. Curriculum not fit for purpose, 5% coming in on that. Lack of reading materials in home languages. I think that's an important topic, and points of the slide speak to that. Socioeconomic factors, poverty, hunger, unstable housing, those are all key, and you can't look at the literacy crisis in isolation. It needs to be against the backdrop of our social fabric in South Africa. And then 10% saying inadequate government policy and implementation. And hopefully we can discuss that as it comes through. So thank you very much for your votes there. Keep them coming. If you've just joined us, please do let us know your thoughts. Let us know where you're from as well. The earlier poll is still up there. So if we look at the literacy crisis and the context of it, English is spoken by 8% of individuals at home, but it's the second most spoken language outside of the household. And I think that's important to note, especially as English is generally the business of language, language of instruction in schools and universities and the like. But what's happening within the homes and languages being spoken in the homes can't be ignored. And how do we then filter that through in terms of our programs and literacy and means of instruction in school, in workplaces as well? Mother tongue instruction, the gaps persist, with many children learning to read in a language they don't speak at home, as I've mentioned. So that is, is the context of the problem we face. And then 8 out of 10 children in grade 4 cannot read for meaning in any language. Some of those research and findings coming out of the Pearls South Africa chapter, the Pearls study, done in 2021. And we've also got the National Reading Barometer, which is a really good instructive and illustrative body of research that gives us, the context into reading habits and also how this impacts children as well. Now, if you see what was happening in the homes, encouragingly, 93% of adults agree that reading with children, improves school performance. Yet time constraints, access to books, books specifically aimed at children, sees that, dropping down to 52% of adults who live with children reading with them. So how do we, boost that? Because it's not just what happens in the classroom, it's obviously what happens in our homes as well. And then if we're looking at a financial impact, it's not just literacy for children, you have adult literacy as well, you have financial literacy. And if we look at the overall cost, you're looking, studies estimate that 119 billion rand per year is what illiteracy costs the South African the South African economy on that front. And then if we look at what our Trialogue research, and this is the type of research that we gather for the handbook. And this is taken from the 2024 handbook, where we look at education, as we know, is a really strongly supported development sector by companies, a number of, NPOs also working in education. But education is vast, all the way from ECD right up to tertiary education and actually even adult further training and education as well. So if we look at that, obviously, in terms of the companies supporting education, we saw a massive jump, although it was already strongly supported, to the number of percentage of companies who support education in some sort of form. And then if we look at drilling down into education, 13% of companies supporting language and literacy programs. So that's the third most supported sector within education as well. So encouraging on that, but obviously, as we know from the statistics and the context that we see coming through, greater support, would be welcome, is needed as well, to push that through, because early literacy has such an exponential impact on the phases of education that follow as well. I'm now going to put up the third poll. For you to vote in. Which areas should corporate social investment prioritize to make the greatest impact on literacy? So let's leave that up for a while, and then I'll introduce our panelists this morning and get into the real crux of the conversation. So thank you very much for that. Let me leave that poll up. Thank you. The votes coming in, so that's great to see. Keep them coming. Okay. Okay, so a lot of you saying investment in teacher training and curriculum development, school infrastructure and learning coming through as well, community reading programs and libraries. We know that in Johannesburg, we recently had the Johannesburg Library reopened. Not only is it a beautiful building, historic building as well, but obviously the access to reading across the board, access to means of studying as well, for those high school students, tertiary students as well. And just to promote and bring a culture of reading back, libraries are so important as well. And another source of support for companies. School infrastructure and learning materials, that's coming through. Early childhood development, I think that's really key. Language and literacy doesn't happen in isolation, as I mentioned, and there's been a lot of focus this year, particularly on ECD, a lot of work being done by the Department of Basic Education, and NPOs and companies supporting there. So it's been great to see that as well. Adult literacy programs for parents also coming through. So thank you very much for your votes on that one there. I'd now like to introduce our panelists for today as I switch over to them. We've got Nobuntu Lange, Corporate and Group Affairs at Volkswagen Group Africa. Thank you for joining us. We've got Prudence Ahrens, Program Manager at Nali Bali. You would have seen the National Reading Barometer, Nalibali, key in involvement in that study there, and Dr. Nompumelelo Nyati Mhohlwane. She's the Director of Reading in the Department of Basic Education. So I really think thank you for your time, firstly, to the panelists, but I think representative of the three arms who are key, business and what business can do, the Department of Basic Education, and obviously NPOs such as Nalibali. So thank you very much to our speakers for joining us this morning. A reminder that the full recording will be shared and an article published in the coming days and sent to all of those who registered for this webinar. And if you'd like to know more about literacy, as I've mentioned, there's the Trialogue Knowledge Hub. There's the URL and link there. So thank you very much for that. You can join, and please do browse and use the Knowledge Hub. It is a free repository as well. So we really do want it to be used by all in the development and responsible business sectors there. I'm now going to turn to my speakers. Thank you very much, and ask you, Nobuntu, I'll start with you, and if you could turn your camera and your mic on. Thank you very much for joining us this morning and making time from VW Group Africa. Tell us about the group's strategy to support and grow literacy levels in South Africa. It's a sector that the company has worked in for quite some time and done really good work.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Sheldon. And thank you for the invitation to be part of this topic. I would have hoped that by now we would have progressed a little bit. You are right, you are correct. VW Group Africa has been investing in this sector for many, many years now because we understand its importance. And for me, it saddens me that in 2025, we are still talking about about 82% of our grade fours who are not able to read for meaning. When we started this journey, it was just 78%. And we embarked on this journey deliberately because we understand that it's a cornerstone of all social and economic development. But unfortunately, so many years, despite all the investments, not only by corporates, but by government as well, NGOs, and everybody who is in the sector, despite all of that, but we're still talking about the same numbers. And instead of decreasing, these numbers are actually increasing. So at Volkswagen Group Africa, we view literacy as a cornerstone of social and economic development. For many years now, we invested in early literacy through our flagship initiatives, the Legacy Literacy Project, which focuses on improving reading outcomes in the foundation phase, particularly in mother tongue instructions. We've prioritized reading for meaning in isiXhosa, recognizing the importance of home language learning through partnerships with institutions like Rhodes, Nalibali. We worked with Nalibali for many years, Funda Wande, Shine. So all of these organizations, we've supported teacher training and deployed literacy ambassadors to work directly with teachers in schools and in communities. So recognizing that literacy is just the beginning, we've recently expanded our strategy because we see that it looks like whatever we are doing is just really yielding limited results. So we've embarked on this holistic cradle to career model. This integrated framework consolidates all our education initiatives from early childhood development to career readiness, ensuring community and deeper impact throughout the child learning journey. As part of this evolution, we are exploring some infrastructure-based solutions that will anchor our education efforts in a dedicated learning environment. While this is still early in development, these plans reflect our long-term commitment to building sustainable, community-rooted ecosystems of learning. Ultimately, our goal is to empower children with the skills they need to thrive, not just in schools, but in life, and to continue meaningfully to South Africa's inclusive growth. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much there, Nobuntu. Yeah, the mute gremlin they're getting me. So thank you very much for that introduction, Nobuntu, and obviously, a brief of what VW Group Africa has been doing for a number of years, and obviously working on in terms of your various different partners. And great to hear that, you're looking to step up your investment in literacy. I'd now like to introduce Prudence Ahrens, the program manager at Nali Bali. Prudence, thank you very much for joining us this morning. What is the focus of Nali Bali's work, and what are your strategic pillars or initiatives around literacy?
Thank you so much, Sheldon, and good morning to everybody that's joined the webinar. So as an organization, we focus on building a culture of reading, right? And we do this to ensure that children, regardless of their background, have the opportunity to learn, imagine, and thrive through stories. We understand the importance of engaging through stories and the learning opportunities that it creates. So because we recognize the practice of literacy and how it develops children that experience reading and storytelling, especially as enjoyable, meaningful, and also ensuring that it's part of their daily lives. Our focus as an organization at the core of our work is to strengthen literacy in the homes, the schools, and in communities. We also, through our training programs, equip caregivers, teachers, ECD practitioners, and community developers with the necessary skills, the resources, and the confidence to nurture a love of reading within their spaces. As an organization, we also provide accessible reading materials in multiple South African languages because we also understand the importance of mother tongue-based reading and learning. And we also, through the different resources that we enable or that we provide, we also contribute to creating safe and supportive spaces where learners are able to engage in reading. And this we do through our reading clubs in the communities and through several of our literacy events. You'll recall at the beginning that you mentioned that September is Literacy Month. And in this month, through the work that we do, through the resources that we provide, through the spaces that we create, we're able then to celebrate and commemorate and also contribute to building a reading culture, building a love for reading through the different literacy events that we host. Our strategic pillars as an organization is for us to ensure that through the resources that we provide and through these spaces that we then establish within communities, we also support them by equipping these caregivers, equipping the educators, equipping ECD practitioners, and as part of our strategic pillars, we provide training for them. We also support our reading clubs and our literacy volunteers. We call them Funda leaders with mentoring and resources and tools. And they are equipped to be able to run literacy campaigns, run literacy events, run literacy engagement platforms within the communities through the training that we provide. And then we excessively partner. We partner with schools, with libraries and NGOs to strengthen literacy in the ecosystem. We believe as an organization that forming part of the ecosystem allows us to be able to contribute more effectively to building a reading culture and to growing literacy within the home, the household, the community, the school, as well as the ECD spaces. We also, another element of our strategy focuses on story and resource development. We produce as an organization multilingual reading resources in print and digital, which include our Nali Bali supplement, which is our newspaper. It takes the format of a newspaper, which is very easy to read. It's also very user-friendly, and it also enables the child to engage with it. So children that take these supplements to their homes are able to engage in the stories that are within the supplements, but they're also able to create their own book. And that for us creates ownership of the supplement for the child. And it also enables them to then, again, reuse it and again, build that love for reading, because when they create it, they have some sense of ownership to it and they engage with it much better. We also provide storybooks. So we commission stories from authors. And through these stories that we commission, we're able to then print it. We're able to then also create storybooks from it, which we also distribute. to the ECD centers, to the schools, and to communities, especially households. And then we have my favorite, and I hope that no one from Nalibali is on the call to hear this, but my favorite is the anthology. It is such a great resource because of what it provides. It has over 20, it has over 10, about 20 stories in it that can be reused again and again by households. So it's a really great resource that we provide as well to households. And all of these resources that I've just mentioned are free of charge to everybody that engages with us as Nali Valley. So this is also another way where we make the resources available and accessible to those that require it. Now, to ensure that we also create accessibility for all, we also make our stories available or accessible through mobile, through radio, and also distributing them in the community. We have our WhatsApp chatbot that has got a range of digital stories that are there. We have our website that also has a range of stories that are able to be downloaded from there. And then through radio daily, on about 11 of our official radio stations, we have our local story sessions that run across these different radio stations in all of the 11 official languages, again, to make reading accessible. So the gogo that's looking after children within the home, that's staying with them, those children that are not in ECD centers, are not then limited to not receiving or being able to access these stories. Through these radio stories, we also make those available, and we also utilize our community radio stations as well. And then another element of this is our literacy events and campaigns. As I mentioned earlier, it is September is Literacy Month. We are nearing the end of it. But as an organization, we really do quite a number of campaigns during this time of the year. You'll see across, if you go into our website, there's a literacy calendar that we've put together that speaks to all the engagements that are taking place across the country, that we're running within the organization. So we host these campaigns. We also have our national campaigns, which is World Read Aloud Day, where we really, we again, have this one story that we promote and that we encourage South Africans to, pledge to read to their children for that one day, for that time. And our aim with these is to reach millions. Just in this year, we were able to reach about 3.8 million people that pledged and that participated during World Read Aloud Day. So our campaigns and our literacy events are a way for us to also, inculcate a learning, a love for reading, and also just ensure that the reading culture is built beyond just reading or just understanding or engaging with reading within the classroom. Our storytelling festivals, as I've mentioned, and also we have these reading challenges that we also, through our storytelling competitions that we have, to again mobilize at large scale public participation in these reading engagements. And that's also part of our advocacy work that we do. We do a whole lot more around partnerships and collaboration, another part of our strategy. We work with government, especially the DBE. We work with funders, with the Literacy Collective, as we're part of the Literacy Collective, and ensuring that we extend our reach and our impact. We also collaborate quite excessively with local organizations where we embed, these literacy practices throughout our diverse communities. And as I've mentioned, our training is quite a big part of it. So our capacity building, ensuring that we provide, training pathways for our literacy facilitators, our volunteers, our reading champions. We're also part of the Reading Collective through the DBE, and we've contributed quite excessively to the Reading Champions, the BEIFS 5. And with this, we really embed, literacy skills and ensure that they are part of community empowerment practices and that we contribute to building this love for reading within communities.
Prudence, that's quite comprehensive. Thank you very much. That's quite comprehensive, and I'm sure we'll unpack elements of those. I see questions already coming in. Thank you, Janine. I've seen your question. We'll pose it. Thank you very much. I've seen a question from Lesejo as well. Just a reminder, if you are joining us, if you've joined us a bit late, please do use the chat function to engage with your fellow audience members. Click on the green button, ask a question button, and then you'll be able to send your question through. I will be drawing from the Q&A, the questions from that to pose to our panelists as well, to really make it a rich discussion that really does go into the topics and the topics of interest that you are that you've got on your mind there, and that would hopefully help your organizations as well be more effective in the work that they're doing there. So thank you very much for that, Prudence. We'll definitely have more time to unpack that as well. But now I'd like to introduce Dr. Nompumelelo Nyati Mohotlwane. She's the Director for Reading at the Department of Basic Education. As we've heard, VW Group Africa, Nalibali, working with the department as well. The department and the government so key to policy, to support, and to reach as well. Having the widest reach. So Dr. Nyati, thank you very much for joining us this morning and making time. What is the DBE's strategy to improve literacy levels among young children, including targets, milestones, and key programs?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to join the dialogue. So the DBE has a national reading strategy that is published. It's a 2024 document that's focusing on 2024 to 2030. And it is, I guess, one of the core aspects that is leading the literacy aspect of DBE. It has 4 components in it. The 4 areas of focus are effectively being clear about what the literacy policies are. And that includes things like the curriculum. What does the curriculum say? How is it being strengthened to address literacy? A second one is around teachers. The second pillar is about teachers, ensuring that we have highly skilled and agile teachers, recognizing that the kind of support teachers have been receiving pre-service, so while they're at university and while they are in the education system, need to be strengthened significantly. As much as all of us would like to have I guess, low-cost interventions. Unfortunately, the kind of teacher support that works is deepened support that requires extended focus and does cost money. So I think there's a recognition of that around teacher support. What do we mean when we say that, and how intense does it need to be? A third aspect is learning and teaching support materials. So what are the resources, books, etc., that teachers need to be able to teach well in their classrooms? I think historically there hasn't been enough clarity on what that should be for foundation phase in particular and what it should be for African languages. And then a fourth aspect there is around advocacy and collaboration with partners and communities. That has been identified as the fourth pillar. And then 2 aspects that are cross-cutting, I think, are language. There is increasing recognition that we need to master reading first in our African languages before focusing on English. And there's a lot of research that shows that that is a strategic and an impactful approach. So our literacy strategy 2024 recognizes that there needs to be much more work done for African languages. And a second aspect there is around monitoring and evaluation, again, cross-cutting, and the recognition there that we need to continue monitoring and participating in surveys that tell us the status of reading. So aspects like the Pearl study, which was cited earlier, are the kind of international assessments South Africa has decided to participate in as one of the few African countries in those surveys, which is an important step that we want to continue to do, because they allow us to measure progress over time as well as trends over time. We've also been introducing our own assessments. So you would have known about the systemic evaluations that were done, I think, 2022 in grade 3, 6, and 9, again, tracking our own progress in literacy and numeracy. And most recently, the Thrive by 5 index, which was released about 2 weeks ago, that was tracking reading amongst 4 and 5-year-olds, and not just reading, but reading numeracy as well as cognitive development and gross motor functioning. So I think it is important that we continue to track and monitor changes and progress. We see that as a core part of DBE strategy. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nyati. I'd now like to ask all my panelists to switch on their cameras and their mics so that we come to you immediately as we pose a question. Thank you very much to everyone, your engagement. It's been great to see who is in our digital room. And Dobeko, Andre, thank you very much for your questions. I will get to those. So we've got a question here in Ubuntu from Janine, who's from Breadline Africa. Thank you, Nobuntu. You mentioned exploring infrastructure advancements to expand on your programs. Are you opening to meeting and greeting Breadline Africa? I suppose the question goes to Nobuntu, to NPOs on the line who would want to get involved and partner with VW Group Africa. How would they go about doing that? What is your strategy in that?
So, Sheldon, our strategy has always to work collaboratively with the NGOs that are specialists in the industry or in the sector. Like I mentioned earlier on, we worked with Nalibali, Shine Solutions, Fundawandi, and all of that. So as we progress, as we evolve with our strategy, also the plan is to work with specialists in the area. As you might be aware, as VW, we are not education specialists. We are specialists in manufacturing and in selling cars. So we work with partners that actually have expertise in this area. So the plans that I spoke about are still in early stage, but we've realized that we have to consolidate our efforts. As long as we run all of these initiatives as interventions, they will continue to yield sporadic outcomes there and there. Yes, there are pockets of excellence, but we've realized that, and we've learned throughout the years that where we have no control in an area, we can't really yield the desired results. We've learned from the Equasilom, so ECD Center, which we built in Kariga many years ago, that the outcomes there are excellent because we have full control of what we are doing. And we have to be embedded and work closely with the communities that we are trying to impact. So the plans that I'm talking about now, even though I cannot really divulge any further because, like I said, they are still in early stages. We are trying to work in the area of KwaNobuhle, which is the biggest township in Kariga. And this township is suffering huge amounts of youth unemployment. And all of these, they stem from the poor education outcomes at an early stage. So we've realized that we have to work in that community. All the interventions must really be embedded in that community to ensure that we yield better results. So we work with the Department of Education, the district department. We are still at the planning stage, and we're working with other organizations. We've worked briefly with Breadline before in terms of installing ECD centers. But as soon as we have more information about how we're going to expand this program, we will be able to make it public so we can then garner support from all the other organizations that work in the sector, because we realize that this problem is not a problem to be solved by just one organization. We need to collaborate and we need to work together in order to make any progress whatsoever. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Nobuntu, and we hope to keep our network updated with any developments from the VW group. Now, Prudence, I want to come to you because I want to stay with a comment, additional comment that Janine made, and I think it speaks to if you think of the ecosystem of literacy. Right, Janine saying that Breadline Africa has worked with Nalibali before on libraries that were 3 library projects in the Eastern Cape, KZN, and Mpumalanga. How important is it, in terms of your collaboration with other NPOs? I know we've spoken about NPO, government, and business collaboration, but collaboration with other NPOs where, you're bringing the strengths together. So your strength might be around literacy and the various training, but you may have other NPOs whose strength may be in infrastructure or their work within specific communities. How important is that type of collaboration to, the work that Nalibali does?
Thank you so much, Sheldon. I think this is very important. And as you've said, for us, collaboration, it works more effectively when we bring our different strengths together. We're all working towards the same objective as organizations, right? Which is to strengthen literacy within the country, especially for our children within the foundation phase. Now, as Nalibali, we work extensively with other partners. We have at the beginning, when we start our work, we actually do what we call community mapping, where we assess, who are the organizations that exist within the communities that we want to go into, what do these organizations do, and how can we leverage from the work that they do and really strengthen and build on top of what they do. For us as an organization, being part of an ecosystem is very important, because when you are part of an ecosystem, you're actually contributing much more effectively in, where you definitely don't work in silos. So instead of working in silos and coming into the community and doing what you want to do as an organization and reaching your objectives, it's not as effective as it would be when you are working collectively with the structures that exist. We work very closely with organizations such as Room to Read, for instance, where their focus is coming into the space, the community, and building the infrastructure support for libraries, for accessibility, around reading corners, and ensuring that the resources, the material, that space is equipped for engagement with these resources. And where we come in as an organization is where we strengthen the ECD practitioner, where we strengthen the educator to be able to utilize that resource more effectively, teaching them the fundamentals on how to integrate a reading culture within their activities, how to ensure that there's reading through play, where we strengthen them as the individuals that are driving the literacy engagement within the schools, within their care, within the home for the caregiver, as well as within the ECD center for the ECD practitioner. And that has been seen as much more effective because we strengthen what Room to Read has brought into the school, what they've brought into the ECD, and they also strengthen what we've brought in terms of capacity building for the practitioner, for the educator. So really forming part of an ecosystem is so much more effective, because when we work together, we are able to then achieve so much more, and we're able to then eradicate the challenges that exist within literacy, as opposed to working individually, working in silos. So as an organization, we really, through our work, we do extensive collaboration within communities. And I want to bring another example of our work within in collaborating, is that we've recently entered into another space where we've seen that the male is very absent when it comes to promoting literacy or engaging in literacy activities within their homes. And as an organization, we've then built into our strategy to support the male figures within the fathers within households. So we've built a program around that, and how we actually come into the community again is through organizations that already have, males that are active within the literacy space, that want to learn more and want to create engaging spaces. And where we come in is to capacitate them and to provide them with the necessary resources. So we're not coming in and, looking for our own fathers within the community, but we're looking at structures that already exist so that we can again strengthen those and capacitate the fathers within those spaces, so that then they're able to go into their homes and build this literacy culture and have the resources to do that. So that's just another way as an organization we really work through structures, we work in partnership, and we form part of an existing ecosystem. Yeah.
And I think, you touch on a number of important points, in terms of how we think about the dynamics of families, the role of male figures in that as well. One of the elements that we'll be showcasing in the 2025 handbook, which is due out in December, is actually the State of the Fathers report, that 2024 report. And obviously one element of that is, well-being, how male figures interact with children in the home, and obviously reading being being, you know, a key part of that. Nompumelelo, I want to come to you and a comment, in, you know, and I suppose staying with the theme of collaborating and partnerships and the like. Lesego asking how can NPOs, companies, I suppose, as well, how can they partner with schools? What is the best way to go about it? You know, and I imagine to avoid a fragmentation of what is done, and you know, so we ensure that work and that collaboration is being streamlined and aligned to government's frameworks and policies.
I think you have hit the nail on the head in terms of fragmentation. That is possible because of just the volume of schools and the number of NGOs that could be involved in schools. So we are trying to coordinate that much more, allowing schools, of course, to opt into programs and support, but also making sure that this is documented at a district level and documented provincially and even with us, so that there is a holistic strategy, in particular for literacy for the first time at a district level. And the idea here is that if the district and the rest of us in the system know what schools are involved in, we don't invite them to conflicting training that is about the same topic. It is an area of work, though, I think that increasingly needs thinking and better guidance on how and when to collaborate with schools. But as things stand, we encourage NGOs and partners to firstly go to the district. I think ideally districts have a sense of which schools are involved in what and where the need is, because sometimes, you know, you might identify a school because of convenience or proximity, but actually there are other schools that are much more in need of resources. So I think working through the districts is a better way of partnering with schools. Sheldon, you're on mute.
I thought by switching off it, we had a small issue with your sound early when you started your answer. But Nompumelelo, a lot of what the base of literacy happens either at ECD stage or happens within the home, you know, before they even get to grade 1, grade 2. Now we know a lot of good work has been done in terms of absorbing ECDs into the DBE, as well as, you know, I think for me it's a shining light in terms of the work that's been done around collaborating with NPOs, with corporates to get money funneled into ECD, you know, so that we obviously get greater access. When it comes to before school, so ECDs or at home, what sort of programs or what sort of work does government do or can government do around that to ensure that, you know, your 0 to 5, you mentioned the Thrive by 5 survey, which were the results which were recently released or published. What programs or what work does government do that can facilitate or support that early stage, you know, the 0 to 5, even if it's outside of, you know, your traditional schooling framework?
Sure. So sorry, let me get this call out. So the big thing that is happening in that 0 to 5 age cohort is done in homes and in communities, as you said. I think the big drive that government is pushing is making sure that children are enrolled in some kind of program. So unlike in formal schooling, so from grade R onwards, a lot of children, 95% plus of children who should be in school are in schools. In the ages of 0 to 5, a lot of children are not in programs. And so making sure that as parents, as communities, as funders, we support the introduction of children into programs is a big thing. The DBE currently has something we're calling Banapele, a mass registration effort. We've just hit 10,000 centers or programs registered. And what registering a program does for children is, one, it introduces them to making sure that they can be known about and sort of have access to a program. and then access things like the grant that is provided for children in ECD centers. So if you know of an ECD center, or if you're involved in that space as a funder, as a partner, I would say it is working with that center, supporting them to make sure that they get registered, and by getting registered, get more support and resources so that more children get the right stimulation, the right kind of support, the right nutrition, which is a big thing. We found that children who were not in any centers were far worse off in terms of their overall holistic development than those that are in centers. So what that means is that ACD programs have a benefit to cognitive development, to nutrition, to counting, to early literacy. And so our big drive there is encouraging parents, make sure your child is in a program of some sort between the 0 to 5 age cohort.
Okay. Now moving on, Nobuntu, I want to come back to you in terms of, why VW, you mentioned obviously the extensive work you've done, you've invested in over the years. It's a key reason, if you or key investment area for you as part of your CSI. You know, what can other companies take away from, why VW Group Africa has, decided to invest in literacy and its importance, obviously, within the ecosystem, and how does it align with the business?
Okay, thank you, Sheldon. So our business is deeply rooted in the communities, and we recognize that the long-term sustainability of our operations depend on the strength and the resilience of the communities around us. So by investing in literacy, we are investing in the future workforce, in inclusive growth, and in a broader development of society. So
Okay.
there's also like building talent pipeline for our organization as well. So literacy is the foundation of learning. By supporting early grade learning, we are helping to build a future generation of learners who can thrive in school, pursue further education, and eventually contribute meaningfully to the economy, including industries like the automotive and manufacturing and engineering. We know like the STEM engineering, the skills, there's quite a huge shortage in that as well. And so for us, we've realized that if we want to build this pipeline, this talent pipeline, we have to start early in a child's life. We are also, our operations in Kariga, we see ourselves as part of the community. Literacy programs help uplift communities. They improve educational outcomes and foster stronger and more resilient communities, which in turn support a stable and productive business environment. So another point is about shared value creation. Our cradle to career strategy reflects our commitment to creating a shared value. It's not just about a corporate responsibility. It's about aligning our social investments with long-term business sustainability and national development goals. Ultimately, literacy is the gateway of opportunity. So by supporting it, we are helping to build a more inclusive, skilled, and empowered South Africa, which benefits everyone, including our business.
And I think that's a great juncture for us to launch the fourth poll, which is looking at how companies can support beyond financial support. What can they do beyond financial support to build literacy programs? So I'll launch that poll now and give you some time to familiarize yourself with the options. But I do think it's important to think broader, and it's been a part of what we've been discussing throughout the year. That support goes beyond financial support. To literacy programs, and not just literacy programs, all CSI, in fact, because companies have such rich sets of skills across the business, be it from marketing to financial skills, which can support communities, can support NPOs, to make the, to amplify the work that's being done there. So those results coming through, offering business expertise for program management, that's one coming through, providing employee volunteer support and mentoring, if you think about reading and the like, facilitating partnerships across sectors. I think that's a really good one as well. Often companies have a number of relationships beyond, their core sector that they operate in, advocating for literacy at a policy level, which is great, I think, there. And another option, although votes still coming in, incorporating reading and book distribution into other CSI programs. And I thought this was a very innovative approach, that as in researching for the webinar that came out, so there may be a CSI program that is focused on mothers and children or more from a health aspect, and saying we're already reaching those communities, those people. How do we possibly plug in, and extend our CSI programs and amplify our CSI work by, plugging in books and distribution of books into that, into those networks. And I mean, as we saw from the presentation, getting books into homes is an important step. Most parents, as we could see, almost all, 93% agreeing that, being able to read with your children and having children, go through the reading journey is important to improving their performance at schools. Thank you very much for all of your questions coming through and voting in the poll there as well. Andre, thank you for your questions. I see them. Lesego, your additional ones coming through there. Please keep those questions coming. I'll draw from the Q&A box for us to work on or to put to the panelists there. And Prudence, I want to come to you. Andre asks a good question. Often we talk about what we should be doing, and I think that is coming through quite strongly here. But he also asked, what should we stop doing, to look at how do we shift the needle or shift the dial on literacy. So, I suppose things that we, should stop doing. Andre wants to, and which could help NPOs focus their work and work on areas that, that do bring results.
All right. Thank you so much, Sheldon, and Andre, for that question. I think one of the main things that come to mind is that we should stop leaving literacy development for our children up to the school. A lot of us leave it up to, the child only engages with reading, they only engage with, any literacy activities when they are in the school. And I think that's one of the core things that we need to stop doing within communities, right? And I think another thing that we should stop doing is not driving initiatives that are data informed, that are research informed, because what that allows us to do is to only solve for what's on the surface. We see children not advancing. We see children not being able to read for meaning. And we actually don't listen and see what at the core of it, could be the challenge. And that again, for me, and just in my experience working within the literacy field, is how I've seen how, some of our organizations only solve for the surface because of what we see. And it's not informed by research and actually seeing to it to see where does the actual challenge lie and how do we eradicate for the challenge as opposed to only touching on the surface. And I think when we think about the initiatives that we drive, when we think about the interventions that we drive, it should solve for long term and not just at surface level. We understand that this is also driven at a much deeper level, especially within policy. And I think we also do not do initiatives that can drive, the needle within the policy, within policies that are structured. We have organizations that do a lot of advocacy work, that do a lot of work in terms of just contributing to policies. And I think what we should also stop doing is not driving that work in shaping the policies within education, shaping the policy within literacy. We've got several opportunities within the DBE where the DBE drives a lot of initiatives, and as organizations, when we plug into it, it's also for us to ensure that we are driving and actually making our voices heard within the policy so that we can drive these solutions more effectively. So I think if we look at those three at the core, to stop leaving it up to the school, where the child only engages with learning and literacy within the school, and we build this culture within the community and the households, we're able to get more effective results. Whereas organizations, we only also solve for what is at surface level, because that's not going to solve the problem, at the end. And where we also don't really shift or position ourselves to be able to contribute much more effectively to advocating. And our advocacy work is so much, and it can really move a lot. We've seen this in so many campaigns that are run across the country. And if we also focus our campaigns, our advocacy work around literacy, we're able to shift the needle and contribute to policy much more effectively. But I think at the core of it, those three for me would be much more effective.
Okay, thanks very much, Prudence. Now, Mpumelelo, from government side and your messaging, because we've got a comment here from, and I suppose I'll actually come to you as well, Prudence, after that as well. We've got a comment and a question here from Brigitte asking, how do we get focusing on teacher support? Mentioning teachers are tired, overcrowded classes, no support from parents. Often not because the parents don't want to support, but time in some of these surveys has come through as a big factor, right? In being able to find the time to sit down with their children, making sure that there are books as well, and books that are able to, build children. So not just necessarily the newspapers and the like. You obviously need reading material at the appropriate age for that. In terms of the work and the focus on teachers, Nompumelelo, what would your message be to NPOs, to companies, in terms of how they can support teacher development on the ground and teacher support as well?
Sure. So I think some of the issues that you've mentioned are not teacher issues, right? They're sort of systemic issues, things such as class size, that are things where the DBE and provinces need to work on those kinds of things. So yeah, acknowledging that firstly, there are those kinds of barriers, but there is the kind of teacher support or teacher training that we have found most helpful is one where we, in this current context, 2025, acknowledge the learning and training, etc., that teachers have already gone into. So I think what we sometimes do as NGOs or organizations is well-intentioned, but assuming that we are training teachers who've never been in a program before. So kind of saying to a teacher, abandon everything you've been doing and start doing my program, and then supporting that teacher for 1 term or 1 year. And then next year, the next NGO says, hey, the thing you were doing last year, abandon that, start doing my program. That is not a helpful approach to teachers. So increasingly what we need to be doing is, before coming in with a program, is doing some background work on what teachers have been doing, what have been the dominant programs they've been trained on, and making the links for the teachers. So as you are introducing your new set of lesson plans, it is helpful to say to a school or a teacher, I know you've covered these lesson plans, here's how my version is different, so that we're building on knowledge that exists and not kind of undoing what has already been there. It's the same, I think a second component that we've seen working with teacher development is being comprehensive. And this means not just giving lesson plans, but it's giving materials that are aligned to that lesson plan, and then training that is not abstract, but is about the materials that you've just given teachers. So it's kind of not training teachers, for example, on how to teach letter sounds conceptually. It's saying to a teacher, I'm going to train you on what you can do in your classroom tomorrow. Here's an implementable approach to teaching reading. And we found that sort of comprehensive package, acknowledging where teachers are, what they know, making it clear what you are adding to what they already know, giving them actual resources to use, and being clear on how they can use that tomorrow in their classroom, allows training to be meaningful, allows it to be embedded and taken up. And I'm sure all of us here can identify with that. We've all been to amazing training where they taught you something new, and then you got to work and just kept doing what you were doing before, because it wasn't implementable. So it is around making sure that the things we are doing and saying are implementable, and addressing the actual gaps that exist. Yeah.
Prudence, to come back to you, and I think Nompumelelo makes a really good, draws a good example, and you can see how it may work, roll out in reality. The intentions may be great, but you've got teachers who then work with an NPO or are taught one set of, I suppose, principles or support programs, and then another one may come in later, and that shifting. So you start that relearning cycle all over again. And the intention may be, 100% pure and good, but in terms of the practicalities and the rollout, the effect may not be, have the desired impact. From NPO's perspective, in terms of supporting teachers, both psychosocial support, if that's the case, also teaching programs, what would your advice be to NPOs when thinking about, going into support teachers or any sort of program rollout?
I think I want to actually draw from what Dr. Nompumelelo shared, and that when you come into the space of education, especially within the school, you want to develop the educator with skills that they're able to utilize, right? We know where the challenges exist, and we know where the gaps are, and we know what needs to happen for us to be able to address those challenges. And I'll make an example with what we do at Nali Valley. We actually drive our training programs, our capacity building programs for educators by taking what they've learned in theory and showcasing what in practice it could look like. This looks like taking the resources that we provide them with, right, and modeling what a read aloud session potentially could look like, and modeling what and how to utilize the resources that we provide them with, so that when they go back to the classroom tomorrow, they're able then to draw from the experience or draw from the example that was showcased in the day before when they were attending the training. But actually marrying this with what they've learned in practice, they know that they should be teaching the child how to read, right? And what we then showcase is then what does that how to read look like in practice, and how can you make it so much more fun so that the child is more easily engaged in it, right? How do you then build the reading culture within the classroom by utilizing the resources and utilizing the skill set that you've built, and actually aligning these two so that the child can become more engaged and the child can then build that love for reading. So again, it's merging what they already know to what it looks like in practice. And that for me is how NGOs should look at the work that they come in to do when they do capacity building for the teachers within the classroom. And I think, just as Dr. Nompumelelo said, it's really about not reinventing the wheel, not coming in and doing something totally different to what has been done, but really understanding what is the foundation that has been laid in terms of development for the educator and building on top of that. And that's where the ecosystem comes in again, because when we work together as NGOs that are within the literacy space, we're able to know, what type of interventions some NGOs are driving within the school. And for me, it would start at understanding who has worked in the school before, what have they done, how have they developed the educator, and what will your capacitating this educator bring for the educator, and not reinventing the wheel, but really contributing much more effectively. And that's how we drive our work within Nali Valley, to not come in and work in silo, but come in and see what is the foundation that has been built and that has been laid, so that we are able to build on top of that. So it all has to do with, one, collaborating, secondly, understanding the foundation that's been laid, thirdly, ensuring that you showcase, you model what the learning is and how to actually apply it, so that the educator doesn't have to go and still, process what it looks like and still try and read through and understand what they need to do, but are actually able to take the skill and actually apply it as soon as they reach the classroom. Yeah.
Okay. Nobuntu, one of the topics we've had a look at this year, especially from coming out of, well, in fact, over the last 18 months, in fact, from our conference into last year's handbook, is collaboration. And one of the, the topics that has come out is, how do we build cross-sector collaboration, where we're saying, how do companies work together? Because, there's ultimately one goal when it comes to responsible business and, some of the development improvements we'd like to see as a country. How can companies work together? I mean, often companies, almost are competing in their traditional business arenas. But when it comes to CSI, there are opportunities to collaborate, to amplify the work, so that we're not doing two bits of work in two different areas, but we're saying, okay, well, let's amplify either our impact or our resources as well. So what would your message be, and how can companies think about collaborating, not just with government and NPOs, but with each other as well?
So, Sheldon, for me, again, drawing from what Dr. Nompumelelo was saying, there is definitely intervention fatigue in schools because as corporates, we all want to go and implement our own initiatives with our partner NGOs because we believe what we bring is better than what has been there. But if we want to do this in a meaningful way, we have to work through the local education district to ensure that our programs, they complement existing efforts and fill in the critical gaps. And also, if we're going to be like leveraging on complementary strengths, each sector, like government, private, or civil society and academia, they bring unique assets. Government provides policy framework, infrastructure, and national reach, while the private sector offers funding, innovation, and scalable technologies. NGOs are implementing partners. They bring in grassroots access, community trust, and pragmatic expertise. So it is very important that when we go into schools, we actually identify before we even start the initiative, what are the gaps in that particular environment? Who is already working in the environment? What are they doing? And then see how we can fill these gaps. And there can be no competition really when it comes to social issues. We need to be able to put aside the fact that we are competitors. And as VW, we've done that very well. We've worked with other organizations that are direct competitors to us because we understand that the ultimate goal is to improve outcomes in the classroom, is to improve the lives of our communities, and therefore we would work together. We just started an initiative now in KwaNobuhle where we work with the financial sector, with Investec, with other funders as well. It's now become a movement because we realize the need, and we've put aside our differences or competitiveness, and we're working together towards achieving this goal, which is transforming our communities.
Okay. Nompumelelo, I want to shift to the topic of mother tongue reading, instruction. We've seen from some of the statistics what the mother tongue or language usage is, obviously starting within the homes, and how important it is, especially because if you look at if you break it down by demographics, the children who are often most affected by some of these literacy developments are Black children, especially in rural areas, so where they are often feel the impact the worst because of, as we mentioned, language, language different languages, development, access to technology, access to libraries and reading material. What is the government's approach or the DBE's approach when it comes to mother tongue instruction and reading development and how it's used in trying to boost literacy levels?
So before I reply, Nobuntu, I really enjoyed what you were saying about competitors partnering together in terms of funding. I've seen that going far further than when we've worked with any one funder. So when we've gone to 3 or 4 or 5 funders and are saying we're going to do something national and people are going to contribute different amounts of money, even though they are competitors, we found that that takes us way further than if we were working 6 times with 6 different funders in small pockets of schools. So yeah, just want to recognize that. Then, Sheldon, on your question on mother tongue, so I think there are a few things to say there. The first is you're right in terms of the language spread in the country and language use. But I think something that is maybe not so well known in our in these kinds of platforms is that most children, about 80% of children, start their education in their home language. So they are starting in the language that they know best already. That has been what the country's been implementing the past 30 years. So yeah, children who speak isiZulu most start in isiZulu, etc., across all the 11 languages. And the case of monolingualism, so the match between your home language and the language you're learning in, is really, really high. Again, it's above 80%. With the only time where we find there's a mismatch is actually largely in Gauteng, where you can imagine there's a lot of language diversity. And maybe the second province that has some language diversity is Western Cape. But for the remaining provinces, they either have, even when they have three languages, like in Limpopo, there's a high match between the school's language and the language that children are learning in. This is a good thing. It's a strength. It means that teachers are able to immediately build on the resource children know best when they come into schooling. What we need to do more of, though, to strengthen that is adopting practices for teacher training and expectations that are aligned to those specific languages. So one way we've been doing that recently is creating reading benchmarks. We have now completed the creation of reading benchmarks for all 11 languages. And what reading benchmarks, these are fluency benchmarks. What these mean are what does reading success look like when you are reading in isiZulu versus reading in Xitsonga. And what I mean there is isiZulu's language structure, you can have one word that's actually a sentence in terms of the meaning. So if you're an isiZulu teacher, your child might sound like they're reading slowly, but they're getting to the meaning of three words. And those three words would be what you need to read in Setswana because of its language structure. So we've come up with African language specific reading benchmarks, fluency benchmarks, and communicated that to schools across the country. And the idea there is being able to say to a teacher, whether you're in KZN or in Gauteng, if you are teaching isiZulu, this is what success looks like in terms of reading fluency. This is how many letters your child should be able to read in a minute. And I think that that's a core part that was missing in terms of the infrastructure that we need to support mother tongue literacy. The second component is just affirming, I think, something that is underappreciated in general, that learning to read well in your home language and African language is good for that language and English. So you can't acquire a second language when you haven't acquired a first language. So even for parents who have, and as we know, business, etc., is in English later, it is to our benefit to make sure you learn your first language well first. That gives you the required scaffolding for a second language. And when we've measured that, we have found big language transfer gains in English after targeting an African language. So want to confirm that, it's not a choice. It's not that if you support African languages, English suffers. Actually, English benefits. And then I think a last one is, I'm sure you've heard there's been efforts to extend home language learning to beyond grade 3. Like I said, most people learn in their home language up to grade 3 and transition to English mostly in grade 4. There are current pilots to try and extend this, so trying to teach maths and science in grade 4 in your African language, and then grade 5 and then grade 6. And the idea there is, again, we want to build on the language children know best and start introducing them to new content like science and maths. That work is new and sort of evolving, but I think it's in the long term should be a benefit to the system.
Okay. Thank you very much. There we go. Yeah, there we go. I'm still up. Thank you very much, Dr. Nyati. Where has 90 minutes gone? We're almost at 11 o'clock. So I want to thank you to my panelists for joining us this morning. Thank you to you, our audience, for your really rich questions. If we weren't able to get to them, we will include in our write-up ways in which you can get in touch with the organizations represented today. I know there are a lot of questions and interest in terms of getting resources, partnering, and the like as well, because I know especially the department, Nali Bali, on their websites have really great resources that NPOs, parents can use, ideas as well. Prudence, I want to start with you. We had a comment as well in the chat, and you'd mentioned something right in the beginning in terms of other means of other media means or modes that you use at Nali Bali to promote reading, to promote literacy. How can NPOs, I suppose your tip for them, how can they use other mediums? We know like radio is really strong, has great reach across the country, great penetration as well, is low cost. How can they think about using other means to support parents, support children, get literacy levels up?
Thank you so much, Sheldon. So as you've said, radio for us has been one of the most key spaces where we promote reading and we make our stories accessible for people in communities. And I think that's at the basis of it. What is the one thing that is most prevalent within the community and much more accessible to them? So utilizing spaces like the libraries that exist. So also leveraging from those, and we know that not all communities have libraries, right? But those that have, leveraging those libraries to be able to then create access to reading resources. Parents, being able to go into the library and getting those library cards. And for us as organizations, advocating for those libraries to be able to be utilized, making a noise about the libraries within our communities and what they have, what they possess, and how, you can access them. We grew up having library cards and being able to, borrow and exchange books within the libraries. And also still within the communities, we have as an organization where we promote or establish reading clubs within the communities. And I think those are also a really great resource to ensure that there is a platform for engaging with literacy, and that also there's a platform for parents and as well as learners to be able then to access reading resources through those platforms. So establishing these reading clubs within the communities, we have to make again the ability to start a reading club and to be able to know how to drive it. We've got a course that's available on our website and that's available on our WhatsApp line that people can access to learn more about what it is to be a Funda leader, how to create and establish your own reading club, and also how to drive then accessibility for learners within the communities. And this is available to parents, this is available to caregivers, this is available to volunteers within the community to ensure that there's accessibility that's created within the community. There's also a lot of young people that write stories within the community. And we've got community newspapers that are also readily available and that are also free of charge, utilizing those spaces. We see a lot of advertising being done by supermarkets where they put inserts and leaflets into the newspaper because they know that it's going to get to the home, utilizing ideas such as those and driving those where you make reading again available and accessible for people within the community, utilizing that idea of the insert and writing as well for these newspapers to have these story segments within their newspapers, again, to make it more accessible for people within the households to utilize. And again, community radio stations, they create accessibility and they allow us to come in and do these story segments. Young people are able to come in and utilize these spaces, make their voices heard, and read aloud to children, through these radio platforms.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prudence. Now, Buntu, from your perspective, and I suppose a tip for corporates, what are some practical ways that they can get involved in literacy support already? I know, often the business ship moves slowly. There's budgets that need to be approved and programs and the like. But what are some easy things that corporates can, easily implement, to boost literacy or reading and books and the distribution of books?
Thank you, Sheldon. So for us, it has been really about working with the communities, going into communities and first find out what do they need. And as corporates, often we go into communities and we prescribe because this is what we want to do. And we dish out books, we dish out materials or whatever resources without first finding out what are the communities and need or how can they solve. And often communities know how to solve. They know what they need. We just need to work with them collaboratively as well to ensure that we direct our resources where they are most needed so they can actually be properly utilized as well. And another thing that I would just like to emphasize is partnerships. Partnerships play a transformative role in scaling literacy impact in South Africa, especially given the country's complex socioeconomic landscape and persistent educational inequalities. When these strengths are aligned, literacy programs can be more holistic, data-driven, and sustainable as well. We have to collaborate. It must stop being just a lip service, something that we talk about. We actually have to do it.
Okay. No, I think that's really important. Not, action and not just paying lip service. Nobuntu, thank you very much for your closing thoughts there. Nompumelelo, coming to you and to bring us home, what would be your one tip for companies and NPOs and ways that they can get involved in an effective manner?
Sure. So I think my suggestion would be reaching out to districts and to provinces where you have access to establish what initiatives they have in mind, what plans they would like to implement, and then collaborating based on that. I think it helps with system coherence so that we are all implementing what we've agreed on. And it helps with leveraging funding wherever funding is involved so that, like I mentioned earlier, we are co-funding work rather than funding in competitive ways. And I think a third and final thing is valuing the ongoing participation in assessments. So the fact that we know that children can't read is a good thing, not the part where children can't read, but the fact that we know, so that we keep tracking those kinds of surveys, those kinds of findings and engaging with them more deeply than, we just know the stats. So encouraging people with like the most recent thing being the Thrive by 5 reports, engaging on those reports, actually reading them. What are they saying? What is the call to action that is mentioned there, and leveraging that so that we've all committed and collaborated in the actions we are saying we need so that the next Thrive by 5 has more children that are reaching the required development goals.
Nompumelelo, thank you very much for that. And to echo that, I mean, there's some really great research that has been done, that's continually being done as well. And I think all of what we're talking about, would still, let's not forget, we're still only 5 years away, or at least 4 years away from the impact of COVID, which had a severe and deep impact on many of our children, especially those, in poorer areas, in rural areas as well, where digital technology wasn't as widespread. So it's an important factor to remember in terms of why we need extra support and concerted support around ECD, around reading, literacy, and education as well. Thank you very much to my panelists, Nobuntu Lange, Group Corporate Affairs at VW Group. Volkswagen Group Africa, Prudence Ahrens, Program Manager at Nali Bali, Dr. Nompumelelo Nyati Mahotlwane, Director of Reading at the Department of Basic Education. Thank you very much for your time. I think it's been a really rich conversation, one that will continue to bring people benefits in the work that they do as well. So thank you very much for your time. I think as our our audience has found it really valuable, and hopefully that they'll be able to take it away and implement it in their NPO work, in their corporate strategies, as well. Now that they know what's out there, what government policies are, what programs are being run, and how they can work with NPOs and work with each other as well. And to you, our audience, thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate your involvement, your questions, your chats, as well. Just a reminder that the full recording of the webinar will be mailed to you along with a write-up of the discussion. It will also be posted on the Trialogue Knowledge Hub, that repository of responsible business and development sector information as well. So please do check it out. Thank you very much for joining us today. Our last webinar for 2025 will come up in October. Look out for communication on that, on our social media channels, our newsletters as well. If you're not subscribed, please do subscribe for that as well. And just a final note, please, can you take a short survey, which will pop up in a second? It will help us to, strengthen our webinars, discuss the topics that you want to discuss as well. So thank you very much for that. You can also rate the webinar and the session, which we all use to make what we bring you better and stronger. So from me, Sheldon, and the team at Trialogue, thank you very much, and we will see you in October.